Hello, welcome to another episode of Al's Air Guns. Hey, this is part 2 on our how much would this custom Crosman 1377 cost? Thank you all for the responses to that. Got a lot of really good responses that I felt were both accurate and very well thought out. A few of them surprised me, and we can talk about those in a moment. The first thing I wanted to do was go over the cost of the components involved. In our thing, we were asking for a price, but not including labor. So let's talk for a moment about the cost of the parts and materials. We were assuming a $75 cost for our standard 1377 Crosman pistol. Beyond that, we have a price of $32.50 for the Airgun Mods Picatinny style breech. We have a Crosman suppressor adapter kit. This portion right here sells from Buck Rail for $25. In addition to, let me look here, $12.50 for this suppressor that they make, again from Buck Rail. Also from Buck Rail, we have the hinge kit that sells for $15 and the custom grips, which sell for $17.50. All of the Buck Rail components together total out at $49.50. So $49.50 for the Buck Rail components, $32.50 for the Airgun Mods breech, brought us to a total of $82 for the additional pieces. Add that to the $75 price we're assuming for the 1377, brought us to a total of $157 for components. Now, beyond that, we have the aspect of labor. Now, labor to add the parts themselves, let's go ahead and say, well, you have $50 to $60 in that. You know, we could really look at it and say, okay, in its stock form, this is, say, a $210 to $225 cost for our pistol. All of the parts installed on it and shipped. Now, if we wanted to see the custom valve work and the trigger job that we put onto this, that would be additional labor. The valve work requires pulling the valve, which adds a good bit in the labor, and then actually processing it, as well as a little bit on the trigger tune there. Looking at that low-end price, I would say $50. So $50 to $60, and that would bring, you know, this pistol again is producing over 50% more power than a standard pistol, and that trigger tune helps out tons on shooting, making it a lot more accurate. Before we were looking at $157 component cost. If you went ahead and figured in the trigger tune and also the valve modification to get it to be basically a replica of this pistol here, not including optics, I would say we're looking at a cost of $260 to $285 probably is realistic. While I was curious about that, the Crosman Custom Shop used to be one resource for people that were looking for their pistol to be customized, that didn't want to do the work themselves. And I get that some people don't want to. In starting this exercise, I was very curious what the market thought of prices for these. Prior to the custom shop being available, a number of airgun smiths used to sell a variety of packages that basically went away as the custom shop gained prominence and more people started buying parts and doing their own modding. Now, you know, one of the comments that got was, well, I think anytime a pistol's modified, you decrease the value. And I get what they're saying on that. That's certainly true. Rarely are you going to customize anything and sell it for the price that you really have in it in terms of customization. What I was looking at here, though, was more of something comparable to the old custom shop, where you had a package you could buy with all of the modifications included and done professionally on all new parts. So, you're not buying somebody's project, but you have professionals taking new components and assembling them as they do day in and day out professionally. And then, what would the market bear for something like that? I was also very curious if Crosman or someone like that wanted to turn out a pistol with similar capabilities, what kind of room would you have to do that with? I would think a manufacturer could easily turn out $185 to $200 alternative for this. You don't have the labor and expenses that you would have with the third party receiving all the components, unboxing them, taking everything apart and putting it back together. So, it was very interesting to me in terms of what did people think something like that would be worth. So I guess a follow-up question is, if these were available for $225, is that something you think the market would bear? I noticed on Buckrail's website, they have started putting together some pistols for sale. I believe they have the Beeman and a couple other ones that they go ahead and rebuild with their own parts in specific packages. And just wanted to go through an exercise like that. I think very realistically, someone could turn out something pretty darn cool for $185 to $265, depending on how far you wanted to go with some of the labor in terms of tuning, accuracy, and if you wanted to potentially upgrade some of the components from where we are. So, I got a lot of really good intelligent responses. I'll actually share a couple of them with you now. But that was kind of my purpose in this exercise, and I really want to thank everybody that participated. Now, obviously, you wouldn't have to upgrade, say, the grips, for instance, and this is something pretty much anybody can do for themselves. Swapping a pair of pistol stocks basically involves removing a couple of Phillips screws and taking off the old one and putting on the new one. So something like that, you may even want to leave out of the basic bundle, or you could ship the pistol stocks in a package and let the end user do that themselves. Something like a hinge kit, some people might, be hesitant to do themselves. You do actually have to take a drill and enlarge the hole and go ahead and fit the new component. Not everybody's comfortable taking apart the front end of a 1377. Once you have it apart anyway and are doing the hinge kit, it really doesn't add any labor, or very much labor, to go ahead and do this front end kit. So that can really be added pretty much for the price. So thank you again for the comments. Hey, let me read some of these to you. I think you might find them to be interesting. So let's do that right now. We got a response from Plumber Guy 3553 who told us, you probably have about $300 in it. And, that's not far from off. I was kind of surprised that our actual materials cost came in at basically $160, $157. So, prices have come down quite a bit. Now, another person mentioned that, you're talking about 3D printed parts for part of this, and they felt that more value would be added if this was, say, a steel breech or an aluminum or brass breech, and these were perhaps wooden stocks. Well, hey, I agree with that entirely. Those components have a greater cost and a greater worth, and these days are considerably harder to come by. So I thought there was some merit to that. Rich Ford 755 said, very nice, parts plus pistol cost bare minimum. And I agree, at $157 or $160, that would be a bare minimum. Again, you'd have no labor in it. Basically, you could ship somebody a box full of parts for that. But to go ahead and put them together, I think at a minimum, adding another $40 to $50 to that is pretty darn inexpensive when you think about it. Another one we have here from David Turner, 924, said, looks fantastic, $200. Hey, I think you're about spot on there, David. And I had told people to go ahead and ignore the optic, assume that was coming with it there. Now, let me look again at the next one. Papa T at Papa T's Adventures chimed in with, he had bought a bunch of parts for around $100, and he was thinking that, well, I'll read it. So with parts installed, including the moderator, I'd assume 125 to 150 was reasonable. Well, I'd have to feel you're a little bit low on that, Papa T. And, as he says here, that that's the next one. I'll go down to another one that shares this sentiment. And he's saying, I agree with the sentiment that some devaluation happens in the process. And hey, I agree with that. If you're buying a customized motorcycle, a customized car, and potentially a customized pistol from Joe Blow that did it for themselves and are now selling it, I would 100% agree. I'm talking about if this was coming from a reputable firm that did this on an ongoing basis, just like Buck Rail does with a couple of the packages that they have out, or like the Crosman custom shop does, where you're taking all new components and you're having qualified technicians do the work. I don't agree with that devaluation in that instance. Another one, Gumby's Town, said, in my opinion, modifications really don't bring the value to anything. If anything, it devalues, and it may now be, he says basically it devalues, maybe, just maybe, if there was a walnut grip, machined aluminum suppressor, or that kind of thing. But otherwise, his feeling is the 3D printed stuff really doesn't hold any value. So I thought that was a really interesting perspective both of those people brought to the table, and that's why I wanted to share those. That was kind of the old thinking on some of this stuff, but more of the responses actually tended to favor this being a $200 to $300 pistol. And again, I think they're assuming what I had said, hey, these are all new warranted parts from a manufacturer that were assembled professionally and shipped out, with a warranty on it, and not something you bought from Bob, who did all this own work. Somebody mentions there's a company called Buck Rail that does this kind of thing. Let me see. Well, I think that's probably summarizes a lot of this. A number of people kind of counter. Here's one from Michael White, CX4HO, saying, these make great prepper tools. I also use the 3D printed suppressors from Buck Rail, and I'm very happy with the sound suppression. Thanks again. So I think that there's certainly two sides to that coin. And the one thing that I've heard quite clearly is that 3D printed parts do not hold the value to many people that machined metal or parts fashioned from wood would hold. And I agree with that too. If you were taking this pistol apart and selling parts, well, a 3D printed part that cost you $32 probably has very little value on the resale market, whereas a brass breech from one of the manufacturers that are still doing that may have set you back $75, $80, but you can look at it as long as the condition's good. It probably holds a lot of that value. And in the event that it did have scratches, blemishes, that kind of thing, a brass breech can be reworked. You can polish it, you can refinish it. Whereas the 3D printed parts don't possess that kind of longevity or durability, and therefore don't have the inherent worth that some of those others would. So anyway, I thought it was a very, very interesting exercise, and I really like the opinions that were shared on both ends of the spectrum. I don't feel like any of them were wrong. I thought there was a lot of merit to all of the opinions, and was really just curious. One of the things being with the Crosman custom shop done, and there's one other example is Pyramid Air. You can order this pistol from Pyramid Air along with a Crosman steel breech and LPA MIM sight, and I forget what their charge was, but basically if you want to, one of their technicians could go ahead and do the work for you and ship it with the breech and sight installed. In my opinion, that would not devalue any of the components and would certainly, again in my opinion, offer a value to many of the people that might want to go ahead and purchase it that way that didn't have the inclination, time, or perhaps aptitude to go ahead and do that work themselves. So anyway, this is a pretty sweet pistol. I really enjoy it, not particularly looking to sell it, but yeah, I really wanted to get people's opinions on it. And I think everybody did a really fine job of covering the bases. Of course, you're welcome to look through the comments on your own, add any of your own thoughts. And yeah, thanks a lot for participating. Thanks for sticking with me to the end of the video. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up now, but I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Hey, thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.